Hello Moto GP fans. Welcome back to ZNGP Today. Alberto Puig has witnessed Marc Márquez at his highest peak, and at his lowest point. From the injury nightmare that began in Jerez in 2020 to the moment Márquez reclaimed a world title, the Honda team manager lived every chapter up close. Speaking in DAZN's documentary Volver, Puig described why that championship meant more than trophies or statistics. Santi Hernández, Marc Márquez's former chief mechanic and close friend, has opened up about the emotional arc behind Márquez's 2025 title, his first with Ducati. In the DAZN documentary Volver, Hernández describes watching a friend reclaim joy and purpose after years of suffering. Don't forget to click subscribe button and the bell icon for MotoGP news update. Marc Márquez's injury in Jerez did more than break a bone, it fractured certainty, rhythm, and confidence. For Honda, and especially for Alberto Puig, those years were not just about missed results, but about watching a rider fight doubts that went far beyond racing. Repeated surgeries, failed comebacks, and constant pain reshaped Márquez's career and tested everyone around him. Puig was not only a manager during this period, but a witness to suffering that rarely becomes visible to the public. Seeing Márquez return to the top meant seeing the end of a long emotional tunnel that few ever truly escape. We have lived through his ordeal, his suffering, his despair, because in the end, it was absolute despair. That shared experience created a bond that survived team changes, results, and even Márquez's eventual departure from Honda. The setting of Márquez's title-clinching race added layers of meaning. Motegi, Honda's home Grand Prix, demanded more than speed, it required composure under immense emotional pressure. Puig explained that the team needed a podium, Márquez wanted the title secured immediately, and Japan offered the perfect stage. The presence of Joan Mir, a Honda rider, on the podium reinforced the symbolism, past, present, and legacy aligning in one moment. For Puig, it wasn't scripted drama. It was something that unfolded naturally after years of frustration. It was very emotional, to be honest, for everyone involved. In that instant, competition gave way to collective release, not just for Márquez, but for those who had stood beside him. One of the defining images of the championship was Puig and Márquez embracing. No speeches. No explanations. Puig says none were needed. After years of shared pain, the meaning was already understood. In elite sport, victories are often celebrated loudly, but this one was quiet, intimate, shaped by memory rather than noise. Puig emphasized that everyone present knew exactly what that hug represented: survival, endurance, and closure after a journey that few outsiders could fully comprehend. With just one hug, you understand everything, you know what the other person is thinking. It was not a celebration of dominance, but recognition of resilience. Puig noticed something different in Márquez's reaction after sealing the title. This wasn't explosive joy, it was calm relief. After years of questioning whether the sacrifice was still worth it, the championship restored meaning to the struggle. Puig described that moment as one of peace, a mental exhale after a prolonged internal war. The victory didn't erase the pain, but it justified it. For Márquez, the journey had finally aligned with the outcome. At that moment, after his whole journey, he says, "Now this makes sense." It was the look of a rider who had nothing left to prove, only to accept. Puig placed Márquez's achievement in a much wider context than MotoGP. Comebacks exist across sport, but returning to the very top, to the same level as before, is extraordinarily rare. Puig believes Márquez's story transcends racing, becoming a reference point for athletes everywhere who face career-ending setbacks. It's not just about speed or talent, but about mental endurance and the refusal to accept a final verdict imposed by injury. I consider it a historic milestone, not just in motorcycles, but in all sports. For Puig, Márquez is no longer just a champion, he is a case study in human resilience. Alberto Puig's words strip away the glamour and leave the truth. Marc Márquez's latest title was not about domination, but redemption. A journey defined by pain, doubt, and persistence ended not in celebration, but in understanding. For those who lived it from the inside, that championship wasn't just won, it was survived. Hernández's relationship with Márquez goes far beyond bolts and telemetry. Years in the garage created a bond of trust, the kind of connection that lets a mechanic sense a rider's mood as well as he senses a bike's setup. That shared history made Hernández uniquely positioned to urge Márquez toward the bold moves that ultimately resurrected his career, leaving a familiar environment, trying new paths, and trusting his own instincts again. For Hernández, the title wasn't just a result on a spreadsheet. It was the payoff for a friendship that had weathered both glory and deep hardship. It was something very special. It was very emotional. To be able to enjoy it, seeing your friend become world champion again after everything that's happened. That joy was personal as much as professional, a rare victory for those who lived every struggle alongside the rider. Hernández described the scene in Motegi as if it had been written for a film. The right place, the right faces, the right timing. Watching Márquez lift the title in Japan, a country so tied to his past chapters, delivered a catharsis that resonated with everyone who had shared the low points. Hernández recalled the embrace, the quiet handshake of understanding, and the almost inevitable emotion that followed years of doubt and surgeries. To him, Motegi was closure as much as it was a celebration. It seemed like it was written in the script. For those watching from inside the paddock, the scene had the weight of a narrative finally reaching its earned conclusion. What stood out to Hernández was the psychological transformation. Márquez's public words about feeling at peace were not PR lines, they reflected real healing. Hernández used the metaphor of a self-inflicted wound to underline how much of Márquez's battle was internal: expectations, identity, the pain of repeat setbacks. The title, Hernández argues, wasn't merely a sporting vindication, it was the moment Márquez could look back and say the inner battle had been resolved, that the relentless pressure no longer defined him. When Márquez says he feels at peace, I think it's because he's finally healed that wound he inflicted on himself. That peace, Hernández believes, matters as much as the trophies, perhaps more, because it marks a rider who has reclaimed his life as well as his career. Hernández finished by placing Márquez's comeback in a broader context. Comebacks happen, but few are complete restorations to former greatness, especially after repeated physical and psychological trials. Hernández predicts that Márquez's story will outlive the immediate headlines. In time, it will become a blueprint of resilience that athletes and non-athletes alike will point to. For Hernández, the hug, the smile, and the title aren't just a personal victory. They're the seeds of a legacy that will inspire beyond motorcycle sport. When Márquez hangs up his racing suit, he will be someone many people will look up to. That's the long view, a champion whose narrative of pain, patience, and return will echo long after the engines stop. Santi Hernández's account turns Marc Márquez's 2025 title into more than a stats line. It becomes a human story of friendship, healing, and legacy. Motegi was the finale on the scoreboard, but for Hernández and those close to Márquez, it was the closing of a wound and the reopening of a life. As Márquez continues his recovery and plans the seasons ahead, that inner peace may prove his most enduring victory. Thanks for watching ZNGP Today, and this is your Moto GP news update. And see you next time!